This episode will be completely taken out of context. Welcome to the Fact Check This podcast.
All right, Fact Check This Daily. And today's article is exactly what the title of the show says. It is entitled, That's Bait. And this is a really interesting article. It's more for those of us who do consider ourselves to be on the right in the wake of a Trump victory, and kind of the way that news and stuff cycles on social media. There's a lot of stuff that's intended to create division, and this is kind of talking about not letting that happen. Also, some of this ties into the second half of tomorrow's regular episode. I'm doing something a little bit different with the regular episodes. Instead of live streaming them, I'm going to set them up, pre-record and set them up as premieres outside of the interviews, just the regular solo episodes. They'll be pre-recorded and set up as premieres on YouTube and then posted everywhere else as well. I've found that the posted videos as premieres get better traction than the lives do, but I still want to do the daily stuff as lives. So anyway, that's the way I'm going to kind of handle those for the time being. So be sure to tune in tomorrow morning. I can't remember, 8 a.m. Central, I believe, is what time I got that scheduled to drop, or maybe 7:30 a.m. Central. But that'll be the regular episode. And like I said, this will tie into the second half of tomorrow's regular episode. So be sure to go check that out. In the meantime, let's jump straight into the article. And this is from Tom Luongo, who's very good on a lot of stuff. That's bait. Chumming the media waters doesn't work like it used to. There's a great moment in Mad Max Fury Road where they roll up to a naked woman chained to a tower, and Max uttered one of his 14 lines in the movie. That's bait. This is a metaphor for literally the entire media landscape in the age of social media. Since Trump's victory last Tuesday, the usual suspects have chummed the waters with every possible bad idea to dishearten and undermine that victory. It's all bait. We weren't 24 hours removed from Kamala Harris's concession speech, a carbon copy of the one Hillary Clinton gave in 2016, where she said fight 20 times, before the first big piece of red meat was thrown down in front of libertarians to virtue signal over, ending the Fed. FOMC Chair Jerome Powell was forced to field a question during the post-meeting presser about stepping down if asked to by President-elect Trump. Powell closed the fucking door on that one with one word: no. At which point, everyone was shocked, I say, to find out that the Fed chair cannot be removed because the president didn't like him. The same goes for Supreme Court justices, for example. This is politics, folks, not philosophy. I'm not endorsing this situation, but I am pointing out that those who have been parroting in the Fed since Ron Paul ran in 2008 should have known this. So, given this background, one has to conclude it's the dirtiest of dirty politics designed to create divisions within the MAGA crowd at the time when we should be coming together on the right issues, staffing the new administration, and discussing which departments to cut and how to finance the debt. So this is something that we've seen a lot with the cabinet picks and stuff. People getting really heated and divided and debating over who's a Zionist and who's a war hawk and all this stuff. A lot of this division is intended to do just that, drive division. It's all bait. It's all meant to put us at odds with each other instead of focusing on the real important issues and the real important goals of the next Trump presidency, and the things that we, as normal, folks out in the world who are dealing with other people, should be talking about and focusing on. And it's also why I wanted to talk about all of the candidate, or all of the the cabinet picks with Don last week, was to kind of talk about, okay, yeah, maybe they do have some bad things, but also look at it from this perspective and think about one of the best things I've seen with Marco Rubio, and it might even be talked about in this article, I can't remember. Okay, Rubio might not be great. Also, by putting him in the Secretary of State position. Now you've removed him from the Senate, where he could potentially be problematic if he decides to, get a wild hair up his ass. And also, this is kind of like capping it for his political career. Like, he's not going to go any further than Secretary of State. And if he doesn't do a good job and he doesn't do what Trump wants him to do, then he gets fired. Like, try to think long term, not just, oh my God, he's so terrible on whatever. Like, be a little bit bigger brain than that. There are more moving parts than just that. So, in other words, we should be setting the tempo rather than responding to it by those most vulnerable to a U.S. government and Federal Reserve in lockstep to defend U.S. sovereignty. For more than a year, I told you there were two big targets for the Democrats in this election cycle: Jerome Powell and Elon Musk. Powell is public enemy number one over his aggressively tight monetary policy, which all Austrians should be rejoicing over rather than concocting even more lurid arguments about stealth QE. For systematic thinkers, having a one-level flowchart on something is important and germane as monetary policy is. Frankly, a pretty lazy and pathetic look. Musk has now challenged Powell for the top spot for exclusion from Davos Happy Holidays card list because of how Twitter and Starlink have thrown sand into the gears of the narrative generation engine, as I wrote about last week. Going back to Powell, since the March 2023 banking crisis, which he fomented for political reasons and raised interest rates in the middle of, just to make sure everyone who mattered got the fucking memo, I eventually stopped being sick of Elizabeth Warren's HR nanny routine from atop the Senate Banking Committee and simply started laughing at her. She issued stern letters demanding the Fed lower the interest rates at seemingly every FOMC meeting, trying to gin up controversy over the Fed. And it wasn't to give anyone relief or for the children. It was to help Democrats win the election and loosen the death grip Powell's higher for longer policy had on European capital markets. But thanks to this silly question by a junior staffer at Politico, now the woke left and the woke right are having their fifis stoked by the remnants of the old banking cartels they both believe are fighting here. If it wasn't so goddamn important, I'd be chuckling and collapsitarian. A buffet at the Waffle House. Next up was debate thrown at trad conservatives over the Mike Pompeo and Nikki Haley. The biggest tell likely to win in a landslide was the intelligence blob floating the rumor weeks ago that Trump still liked Pompeo and that Big Mike was sniffing around as either Secretary of State or Defense. That's chum, folks. And Trump put the hammer down on it after a couple days, letting it percolate. He should have quashed it sooner, but who am I to give the master of the Overton window advice on such matters? And I do think there is a certain extent to which Trump has allowed some of the rumors like Nikki Haley, Mike Pompeo, others that are objectively bad to kind of float around. It's to get an idea of where people are on it, where the shift is, where the opinion is. And Trump has shown with some other candidates for different positions that he will listen to and react to what is being said about these things in the media and in the public, and especially on like Twitter and stuff. You saw the what was the guy that like arrested a pastor for conducting a church service that was going to be that was being put up for head of something that ended up withdrawing, and like Trump withdrew the recommendation for him for the nominee. Like, learn how to identify this stuff and react properly and appropriately to get the correct reaction. This is what Trump ended up saying about Mike Pompeo and Nikki Haley, which is just absolutely amazing. I will not be inviting former Ambassador Nikki Haley or former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to join the Trump administration, which is currently in formation. I very much enjoyed and appreciated working with them previously and would like to thank them for their service to our country. Make America great again. Haley was also a non-starter. He hates her. Her career now starts and ends every day with more coffee and scattered, smothered, and chunked. Got it, honey? In fact, Trump hates Marco Rubio as much as he does Haley, because I believe the rumor about here it is about him becoming Secretary of State. How else are you going to get Rhino Little Marco and his really big manila envelope quotient out of the Senate and replaced by someone who will actually work with Trump rather than against him on the big legislation that needs to get passed in 2025? Promote him, keep him on a short leash about reforming Foggy Bottom, and let him grandstand on China. And if he doesn't want to do what's asked of him, you're fired. See, I read too many of these articles and then they all blur together and I don't remember which one was which. And if I'm wrong about Rubio, is just more and if I'm wrong and Rubio is just more neocon bait, then Mazel Tov, oy vey. But as that one has worked out, it wasn't just bait. It's a sound strategy. That rumor about Mike Rogers to head the CIA and everything else you've seen, all bait. All lame attempts to flood the zone with bad information and drive wedges between Trump's supporters and him. If you can't pick up on the crude attempts at British divide and rule at this stage of the game, maybe you just suck at the game. It took the leaking of a secret ballot organized by outgoing Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to finally wake people up to the depths to which the bureaucratic immune system is fighting back against the chemotherapy Trump's win represents. If Marjorie Taylor Greene stops John Cornyn from becoming our leader in the Senate, I'll take back most of the mean things I've said about her. Most of them. And that worked out. You ended up with John Thune. Thune is definitely not as good as Rick Scott, but he's definitely a hell of a lot better than John Cornyn. So, it's a win-ish. We'll call it a win-ish. Schadenfreude in Berlin. Trump's win caused a political earthquake in Berlin as the German government collapsed after Chancellor Olaf Scholz tried to meet a cash call to his creditors on Ukraine. FDP Finance Minister Christian Lindner refused to approve another 6 billion euros to Ukraine. But Germany is out of money this fiscal year, and it needed to go to Bundestag. So Scholz fired him, and Lindner pulled the FDP out of the coalition. Now the situation in Germany is in the kind of flux we usually see in places being color revolutioned. They're so desperate to hold on to power, they're now being regaled with the latest fantasy of the Saxony separatists, all three of them, as the last reason to ban alternative for Germany and keep them from participating in the upcoming snap elections. Then again, that's bait for the German boomers. Even if the ban doesn't work, it will knock a couple points off AFD's traditional totals. But they're just doing the tactical retreats here. It's not winning. It's more trying to not lose immediately. Because the cultural and demographic shift against this globalist insanity has already occurred. We're watching the old political order in Germany, held together previously by the iron fist of Angela Stasi Merkel, come apart at the seams. The idea that Germans would simply vote themselves out of existence because of their collective guilt was never really a starter. At some point, the German industrialist class would make their presence felt. Trump's victory likely catalyzed this. Davos' whole project depended on using the generational imprint of everyone post-World War II to manufacture political realities at odds with the self-interest of those people. But that puts a time limit on the project. It had to happen before the generations that fought World War II and grew up in a rebuilding phase died off. For example, for Germans, it was their collective shame over Hitler. For Japan, it was a shame of being bombed by the Americans. For America, it was stoking our self-reliance into self-righteousness. As Howard Lutnick pointed out on CNBC a few months ago, we rebuilt these people through our dominance and allowing them to put tariffs on our goods to regenerate their local economies. Those tariffs are still in place, and it's time to remove them by negotiating much better deals for everyone. But the same demographic shift has happened. We saw it in the state elections in Germany this September, where AfD saw huge gains among the 18 to 29-year-olds. The same thing has been happening in Greece in the aftermath of the German EU strip mining of the country after their multiple sovereign debt crisis. In the U.S., the kids are moving away from the libertine boomers. Even the millennials are finally fulfilling their desires for authenticity after now surviving 3 national bankruptcies during their lifetime: Y2K, Lehman Brothers, and COVID-19. This allowed for Gen X to finally come into their own and deliver the results the world needed. So please, folks, take the wins. Jack out of the Twitter spew for a few days. They want you anxious and afraid. It's all they have left. Because we just told them we don't want what they're offering or need what they've sold us. Trust in the results you delivered just a little. This isn't the same story as 2016. Trust in media has not only collapsed, it's now reached the terminal phase. We just broke the wire. Why on earth would we want to repair it? Giving their crudity credibility. Credibility. A little tongue twister there. Pay attention to the stuff, but learn to identify what's bullshit, what's trying to get you worked up, and what's legit. And if you're not sure, ask somebody. And if I'm not sure, I know the people that I'm going to ask. We need to be deliberate and understand what's going on. The progressive left has lost its stranglehold on culture. The media, mainstream media, has lost its stranglehold on news and information and the truth. All of the establishment is in its death throes, and it is kicking and screaming and doing everything it can to try to remain relevant and try to keep us on the winning side from pushing them all the way underwater and holding their heads until the bubbles stop. Don't let them do it. It's time to finish this fucking thing off. That'll do it for today. I will be back tomorrow to talk about, while we're on the media and stuff like that, tomorrow I'll do an article. It's called, They're Scrubbing the Internet Right Now. It was really pretty cool. It's a relatively short read, about the same as today's. So yeah, we'll do scrubbing of the internet tomorrow. And in the meantime, hope you have a great rest of your day. Be sure to tune in for the episode tomorrow morning, and I will see you after that. Later.